Hi, Grandma here. I'm reading Tirzah, and today I'm reading chapter 17, Hanna. No one left the small camp in the hills. On the following day, Joshua had come with news of plague in the camp. The sickness was everywhere, fever and boils. For some, death came quickly. Until it was over, Joshua advised them to stay where they were. Only Hanna offered to go down to the camp and nurse the sick. Reluctantly, Joshua gave in to the old woman and waited for her to gather her medicines. Now, if you'll remember, that they were all in the hills because they were not part of the rebellion against Yahweh and Moses. So this plague is probably for those who participated in the rebellion. Inside the tent, Mary fell to her knees before Hanna. "Please, my mother, do not go down, I beg you," she pleaded. "Surely Yahweh has sent this plague as a punishment. Do not go, I beg you." Gently, Hanna pried the girl's hands from her robe. "Now, child, Yahweh may punish those who do wrongly, but when a man or woman is down sick, we must not add to their suffering by refusing help. Yahweh has given us herbs and plants to use for the good of all. I must use my skill wherever it is needed." Hanna turned and reached for her potions, placing each packet carefully into her bag. Mary rose to her feet. "I want to go with you and help you," she insisted. "No, child, I cannot expose you to the sickness." Hanna spun around to face Mary, her eyes softening as they sought the young girl's. "You are young, with all life before you. I have lived a long life. I'm ready to go. Now let me get on with my packing, or young Joshua will grow weary of waiting for me." "Please let me go with you," Mary begged. "I'm strong. I know how to mix the medicines for you. You will need me." Once more she grasped Hannah's arm tightly. "Don't you see, Mother? I cannot let you go. Take me with you, and I will serve those Yahweh has stricken too." Hannah's eyes filled with tears as she patted Mary's hand. "You are a precious daughter to me. Come then, if you will, get your things quickly." Relieved, Mary threw her arms around Hannah's neck and hugged her. Mary was not prepared for the stench of sickness that fouled the air as soon as they entered the first tent. Hanna bent over a woman and child, both burning with fever. The woman's body was covered with boil-like sores that oozed. The child had a few angry red sores that had not yet broken. Hanna showed Mary how to make compresses and apply them. Softly, Mary laid a wet cloth on the child's chest. She touched the little one's forehead, smoothing the dark hair from her face. As she did, the child opened her eyes wearily, then closed them again. Mary went on cooling the fevered body with water mixed with fever herbs. When Hanna came to dose the child, Mary lifted the hot head and held it while Hanna administered the medicine. Hanna wiped the last sore clean and laid a compress on the mother's chest. She had done all she could, at most making the woman more comfortable. With a sigh, she motioned for Mary to come and lifted the tent flap. All Hannah's skill would not save the mother, but perhaps the child would live. Outside the tent, a neighbor woman waited for them, a look of woe on her face. "Both her sons and her husband are gone. What will the poor things do?" she wailed. Hanna handed her a small jar of medicine. "Mix 1 part of the medicine with 2 of water and give them each a dose at sunset. If the woman lives, do it again in the morning," Hanna said. "Mercy on us all." "Then the poor woman will not live?" the woman cried. "It is not likely," Hanna replied. "I don't even know if the child will survive. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more I can do here, and others are waiting." Abruptly, Hanna followed a young girl who stood nearby to guide her to her family's tent, where the rest of the family lay stricken. As Mary walked behind them, she wondered if the child would live, and if it did, who would care for that tiny thing? They had taken no time to rest or eat, and already the sun was going down. Wearily, Mary stumbled from the last tent into the dimming light. Behind her, Hanna lingered to watch an old man cough and wipe the blood from his chin. It seemed endless to Merrie, tent after tent filled with people who lay too sick to help themselves or even move. When Hanna finally came, Merrie silently took her bag. Together they went to the tent Joshua had set aside for them. Long before the light of dawn, Hanna was up heating water, mixing fresh potions of herb medicines. Merrie bit her lip as she struggled up from a deep sleep. She wanted to scold Hanna and tell her she must get her rest. Instead, she crawled slowly from her blanket into the cold pre-dawn air. When they were out of medicine, Hanna sent Joshua for more. In other parts of the camp, other women like Hanna worked as she did to save those they could. There were just too many sick, too few to help, and little that could be done for the desperately ill. Each day the death toll mounted. Merrie wanted to shut her eyes to the sounds of wailing mourners and close her eyes to the sight of oozing sores and dying flesh. On the 5th day, there was no new cases for Hanna to treat. On the 7th day, there were no more deaths. As people grew better, they helped one another. It was over and Hanna was no longer needed. At last, they could return to their own tent. Merrie watched while Hanna rested. They had only gone a little way up the hill when Hanna stopped the first time. Her breath came in little gasps. "I'll be all right in a minute, child, just a minute of rest," Hanna had said, and she'd been better, so it seemed. Now, Merrie was frightened. Hanna's pale face was shiny with cold sweat. Her body sagged heavily, like a partly filled sack of grain. She sat on the ground, leaning her head against her drawn-up knees. When Merrie sat at her feet, Hanna looked up with eyes encircled by dark shadows. "You are worn out," Merrie said. "I should not have let you climb the hill until you rested another day." Her hands chafed Hanna's cold ones. "Rest now, and I will watch till you wake," she said. Hanna smiled weakly and let Merrie ease her gently back down on the ground, her head against Merrie's bundle. "You are a good child. Yahweh is good. I'm an old woman who should know better than I do what things an old body can do." She closed her eyes and murmured, "Yes, rest. I will rest while you watch." Merrie did not know when Hanna had slipped quietly away. It must have been after she had made a little shelter over Hanna's head to shield her from the sun. Time passed, but Merrie could not tell how much or when. She sat holding the hand in hers, feeling the stiffness that was already settling in. She was still sitting, holding Hanna's lifeless hand when the twins found her. She saw them and she heard them, but it was as if they were outside her world. She was a shadow. They were real. When Benj tried to loosen her hold on Hanna's hand, she pushed him away with her other hand. They were pleading with her, but if she had a voice, she did not know where it had gone. There was nothing to say. They must have gone away because for a long time she sat in the stillness. The sun beat down on her, making the shadow that she was feeling its scorching fury. She could not feel anything else, only the heat. Egyptians feel heat, she thought. If Yahweh sent the sun, then it must be good. If Yahweh sends his son to me, why do Yahweh's children throw stones? They had hurt her, those little boys with their stones. Now there was no place to go. Her hand felt as if a hot knife were cutting into it. She was puzzled. Were there two of her? One an Egyptian? Who was the other one? She tried to see past the dizzying heat that blinded her. Someone was holding her head to keep it from drowning. She could feel the cold water closing over her body and a voice crying out with pain. Jerioth placed a cool cloth on Merrie's forehead. Tirzah, wincing as Merrie cried out, continued to wipe the girl's arms and chest with a mixture of water and fever herb. "Her forehead feels a bit cooler to me," Jerioth said softly. "I think that fever is coming down." Sitting back on her heels, she watched Tirzah. "My little bird, I do believe that you have the heart of a healer. You have been bathing her for hours now. Shall I let you rest a while?" Tirzah paused for a moment to reply, "No thanks. I really love helping. Besides, I let her rest often. The water feels so cold to her skin that she cries out when it first touches her." Tirzah smoothed the light cover over Merrie's chest. "At least there's no sign of plague, just fever," she said. Jerioth took the cloth that was beginning to warm and replaced it with a cool one. "No, I do not think there is any danger of plague. The child was in the sun too long, probably worn out with grief and hard work in the camp." Tirzah nodded her head in agreement. "Poor old Hanna. Joshua said she saved the lives of many." A tear rolled down Tirzah's cheek and she brushed it away quickly. "I'll miss her, dear old thing. I wish she could have gone all the way to the promised land, don't you?" Jerioth's eyes were full, a look of tender love on her face. "Yes, little bird, I will miss her too. But I think she has already gone to the promised land." Tirzah thought of Moses' words at the funeral. High above the mourners, a lone bird had caught her attention, watching it circle, then hang floating in the air before it flew off toward the west. She heard only snatches of Moses' prayer, but those lines had settled in her memory. She could hear them now. "Yahweh, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world from everlasting, you are God." Tirzah held the damp cloth lightly as her lips turned the words. "Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad for our days." Maybe for Hanna it was like morning. The thought was too big to hold for long. Merrie stirred, and Tirzah placed the cloth against Merrie's forehead. Though it seemed somehow right for Hanna to die at old age, Tirzah did not want Merrie to follow her. And the next one is called Benja's Stone. Now, if you'll recall, Benj and his brother are twins, and they're Jerioth's children, and they are traveling with Tirzah's family. Okay, we'll find out about Benja's Stone. Bye-bye.